My name is Maria Juarez, and you're listening to In This Casa. Bienvenidos. In this podcast, I aim to memorialize and honor my husband David's memory by exploring conversations about life and what it's like in my casa, and hopefully in other casas as well. Welcome back to In This Casa, and thank you for joining me. In today's episode, we are joined by Meredith, who's one of our stylists at DUO Salon.
Hi.
And we're going to highlight my hair, and we're going to talk about my hair journey and grief and what that's looked like since you've been doing my hair since before I lost David.
Yeah,
All
sounds
right.
good. Let's do it.
So what are we doing today, Mare?
We are going to be doing a foliage,
Okay.
which is what we normally do. We haven't done a full in a while, so I think that today we should do a full.
Okay.
I really feel like your hair's gotten a lot thicker though.
How is this situation going up here where the thinning is kind of been happening?
I feel like there's a lot of new growth and
Okay.
there's a lot more like, it's becoming more dense. Like I feel like it's getting to like how it was before.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you want to get started, and then once we're in the thick of it, we'll have some conversations about what the differences were throughout this whole past almost 9 months.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
So just a quick disclaimer about us filming today here at the salon. We're here on a Monday. The salon's typically closed on Mondays, but we thought it would be a good day to film. But the salon does get cleaned on Mondays. So if there's any background noise, it's because people are cleaning and they're here. So if they show up in the shots, that's what's going on. But typically there's music, more stylists, our nail artist, a lot more going on than what we've got going on today, right, Mare?
It gets poppin' for sure.
It does.
Are you comfy?
I am comfy. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Okay, Mare. So you came to work for the salon last June?
July.
July.
Beginning of July.
Okay.
Yep.
So David's accident was August 12th.
Mm-hmm.
So you were probably with us for 6 weeks before he passed away.
Yeah, I was still very new, I feel.
Yeah. But you had already done my hair once.
Yep.
Before his accident.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think we probably did a full highlight the first time
I believe we did.
you did my hair.
Yes.
Okay. So what would you say my hair, from a hairstylist point of view, which I'm not a hairstylist, so excuse me if my terminology is not correct. But what would you say my hair is like, or the condition of it was when you first did my hair prior to David's accident?
I think that, your strands are finer. Like, I think that that's something that you know as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, like, your density was, you had a lot more of it.
Mm-hmm.
As well as, like, I just think that the integrity of your hair, it felt like it was, like, a lot healthier. And we were only a little bit less bright than, like, what we are now. So, like,
Yeah.
I think that the biggest, like, change was, like, I felt as though, I don't want to insult you by saying this, but, like,
No, go
I
ahead.
feel like the texture was a little bit more, like, brittle. It became more brittle, as well as, like, whenever I would be, like, washing your hair after, it would start, like, coming out in clumps a little bit more.
Right. So okay, so David's accident happened, and I probably didn't come back within 6 weeks. It was maybe a little bit longer, right?
We did September.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the end of September.
Okay, so we did do 6 weeks.
Well, it was a little bit longer.
Okay.
We had an appointment.
Oh, no, you're right. His accident, that was 6 weeks from his accident, but we would have done my hair before that.
Right.
Okay.
But we
So
had
it's a
an
little
appointment and we moved it.
Okay.
I think that you weren't ready to do that.
Yeah. And then I came in, we probably did a partial.
Mm-hmm. We did.
And was that the appointment where, okay, whenever we had the appointment where my hair was coming out in clumps, I was aware of that, obviously, because I washed my hair at home and I knew it was happening. But at the appointment, you had done my foils, and then we were at the shampoo bowl, and I could feel that you were trying not to make it obvious to me that my hair was coming out in clumps.
Right.
And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about my hair
right.
while we're doing my hair today, is because that's something that happens to people in stressful times or traumatic times in their life. They will lose hair.
Right. And I really wanted, I wanted to tell you, but I think that you knew as well. Like, I feel like that's like something that like, it can be a little tough sometimes to be able to talk about with like a client. I mean, obviously like I'm comfortable with you, but it's, I mean, we knew like directly the cause. Whereas like normally when something like that would happen, I would recommend seeing like a physician, but at the same time, it's like, I already knew what you were going through and I didn't want to like fuel the fire a little bit.
Yeah. So was that at that September appointment? Do you remember?
I don't think it was actually. I think that the September appointment, it was probably our most quiet appointment.
Right. And that makes sense.
I don't think there was like a whole lot of talking like at all.
Yeah.
And I think that I just kind of did it. And then it was like kind of like more of like an in and out.
Yeah.
But I think it was the appointment after that, which
would have been like November.
Yes, which makes sense because like, especially with hair loss, sometimes things like that don't happen for like months.
Right.
Because what's happening is your body is in shock with like a traumatic event, like losing David, to the point where any hair that is in like its active growing stage goes to the resting stage. So it's like any of your hair that's already like not in that phase is not going to it's not going to continue growing, but also any new hair or any hair that's going to be like continuing to grow stops. It like goes into rest because of like your body is like attempting to, it's in like fight or flight because of like your levels of cortisol. So I mean, it makes sense, but a lot of times the effects aren't until months later. So I don't think that I really like fully saw the aftermath of that until it was that November appointment.
Yeah.
But
so during that November appointment, we talked about it. You did bring it up to me.
I did.
So I can't remember if you brought it up to me at the bowl or once we got back to the chair.
I think I mentioned it at the bowl. Like, I think it was like a little bit lighter, but then I think that once I got back to the chair where it was like more of like a just us kind of thing, that's when I was really able to talk to you about it, because I know that it's like, it's not just from like losing David at the same time, just because I noticed that like you weren't really like eating as much either. And I think that diet plays like a really big role into hair growth as well.
Right. So since I'm technically one of your employers, we spend time together throughout the week and things like that. So, right. So you are able to see, which is a little exceptional, different than other clients, where you see how I am throughout the day. So like to the point of being quiet, you know that even outside of my appointment, I was quiet, kind of shut down. It was clear that I was stressed. It was clear that I was sad.
Yeah.
And I wasn't eating.
Yeah.
So that was something we could talk about as well in regards to the fact that my hair was coming out and feeling thin, is that one, I was stressed, right? So because I had this trauma that I had experienced, which, I mean, that's not the only trauma that would cause that for people. It could be any kind of trauma or surgery or pregnancy. There's lots of things that change that kind of stuff for people. And it's not just women, it happens to men too, right? But then we started talking about it, and I mean, I'm a pretty open person privately. And so I was like, yeah, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, I'm stressed, I'm unhappy.
Right.
So it was kind of all the things. And you did for sure, I think, what was very, very sweet. You were like, you encouraged me to eat, first of all, but you also were very sweet in saying like, text me and tell me what you're eating to try to help make sure that I was, you know, worrying about my nutrition, which I do think helped me to be like, okay, I mean, obviously I don't want to lose my hair. So the conversation was helpful.
Right.
But it did help me to realize that like I need to make some active and intentional changes in regards to my nutrition so that I can not continue to have hair loss and not feel like I need to like turn to like alternative measures.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I completely agree. And I think that like when something like as traumatic as that happens, I think it's like really important for the people around you to be actively making sure that you're taking care of yourself, because I feel like that's like one of the first things to go.
Yeah.
Like when something like that is happening, because it's like, well, one, especially because you have kids, like you're worrying about your children. You know, you're worrying about everyone around you, like everything has to get in order, and you're also trying to like process everything that's been going on and everything that happened, that it's easy to like neglect the care that you would normally have for yourself.
Right. Which for sure was happening.
Right. Well, I also think that like something that I've noticed is like a significant, I guess, like improvement.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. Like it overall, not only just with your hair, but like I think that you've been very mindful of like making sure, you know, okay, even if I'm not gonna like, especially with eating, like even if I'm not gonna eat like 3 full meals today, like I know that I'm at least gonna have this. And I think that you doing your factor meals too, I think is helpful too, because it takes the weight off of you having to worry if you need like, or you having to cook.
Yes.
As well.
And I just recently mentioned that in an episode, how I switched to doing that because I didn't have the motivation to cook for just myself and feed myself. And because of that, I wasn't eating. I was making unhealthy choices, which was either just not eating, choosing to like, oh, well, I forgot to eat today, so it's too late, or eating just whatever. So I did make some very intentional choices in regards to my nutrition, where I started taking supplements again and started doing the factor meals, which at least gave me some clean, healthy meals when I did eat.
Right.
And so that was going to be my question. So that's probably what, December, 5 months later. And 5 months later, there is a difference. There's improvement.
Absolutely.
And so that I think is also important to note for people, because I'm not taking any like hair supplements specifically. I'm not, doing anything beyond just changing my nutrition and trying to mind my mental health.
Right.
And it's already improved the situation with my hair
drastically. And like, that's to say too that, I mean, I feel like it's just going to keep improving too over time, because like we were saying, like the after effects could be like months. So the fact that like we're already seeing like such an improvement, I think it's really good. Like it shows like all the things that you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks, Mare.
Of course.
So I did want to ask if you're okay with it. The day that David died was a Saturday.
Yeah.
And I was here at work when his accident happened. And then I left around 3:00 and we still had clients.
Yep.
You guys were still taking appointments. Amanda was still here working. And then I left and my brother-in-law called me and then he called her while she was working.
So I answered that phone call actually.
When Kevin called?
When Kevin called. I was obviously still very new.
Yeah.
And so, typical, just long as Meredith, how may I assist you? You know? And even though the caller ID said I wasn't like 100% certain, so I just want to be professional about it.
Yeah.
And he goes, I need to speak to Mandy. And I was like, oh, she's like currently with a client. Like, can I ask what this is regarding? And he was just like, this is her husband. Like, this is an emergency. I need to speak to her. And so I pulled her away and I like remember it so vividly. She like took the phone and she starts like walking to the back and like she just like starts like screaming. Wow. And it was, I mean, obviously like that scream. Yeah. Like that's nothing, like there's only one thing. Yeah. So it was kind of like what happened, and at that point Wendy went to the back and kind of talked to her about things, and then we figured out, Amanda's leaving. I didn't know fully to the extent of like what had happened. Yeah. And then after that, Amanda left and she was doing a haircut. So I went and finished the haircut. Thank you. Absolutely. And then I didn't figure out like truly what had happened, because one, I didn't want to ask. It wasn't my business. And I didn't want to just like know to know, like, yeah, it was more of like, what can I do? Like, what do you guys need? So I didn't find out until after we closed that day. Yeah. Fully like what had happened. And I think it was really crazy because it was like, you were just here. You know, and like very surreal. It was so surreal, especially too, because like as close as I am with Bella, I was like reaching out to her and I hadn't heard from her.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of like when I understood, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it, like, I don't want to use the term awkward, but like in a sense, like it's awkward in the sense that like I was new, but I felt comfortable with you guys already. Like I already felt like this was like a family, but it's like,
Yeah.
I wanted to help without overstepping, and like finding that line, I think was like I wanted to be there as much as I could, but without it, like I know that you guys needed like that time as well.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, that's at least how like that day played out. And then we went to the Rosary.
Yes, which was the next Friday.
Yes. And that was the first one I've been to.
Ever?
And yes.
Oh, wow.
And that was also the first time that I've seen David.
You had never met him?
No.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. You and I haven't talked about any of this
No,
previously. This
we
is the first
haven't.
time, yeah, we're discussing any of it. I didn't know you hadn't met him before.
I hadn't. I think because
Jacob knows him. I just assume
yeah,
both of y'all did.
yeah. I did not get the pleasure to like actually meet him, and I think that's
sweet.
why like hearing about like the stories and like why like going was like so important, and like hearing about, I mean, even like listening why like I take this so seriously is because it's like I consider us close.
Yeah.
And I mean, clearly like he was everything to you and still is everything to you, and like I want to know him the best way that I can, even if it is in like this scenario, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's sweet.
But yeah, that was the first time I had seen him.
So, I mean, Amanda kind of, at that point, for lack of a better word, disappeared from the salon for about, for the week.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the day-to-day salon running fell on Wendy, our third partner.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very, very close to the family. Amanda and her have been best friends since they were little. Like, my mom's like a mother to her. Her mother's like a mom to us. Like, we're just really, really close. And so it fell on her because she's technically not my biological sister. And the salon still needed to run, but I'm sure it was hard on her being here. How do you guys feel that week went for y'all, with Wendy having to kind of keep it together and shoulder the responsibility?
It's like I looked at her kind of like she was like a superhero. Like being able to do that, I can't even imagine. And like it was really tough. It was a very, very somber week. And like calling Amanda's clients and kind of letting them know like what was going on, and moving them that way. Like Wendy was very, very good at like keeping it together for everyone else. And I think it was at the end of that week, her and I actually had like a sit down conversation.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to check in and let her know like what she's doing isn't going unnoticed, and that like I am so appreciative that she's able to, make this all work still, and that I can't even imagine how hard that must be. And I mean, there were times that there were a couple of like, I don't want to say breakdowns, but like moments that were a little bit harder, I think.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it was really incredible the way that she was able to do that. But I think it's just because like that's her family, you know? Like you do those kinds of things for the ones that you love. And like, even though it was really hard for her too, I think she took time to feel those feelings once things kind of like got like not like back in order, but once Amanda came back to work and everything, I think that's truly when Wendy like allowed herself to like feel.
Right. Yeah. Like she was kind of just running on adrenaline.
She absolutely was.
Until Amanda came back.
Right. And making sure that like we're okay, and like making which like she didn't have to do that.
But were y'all okay? I mean, how were y'all during that whole, you were brand new to the company, and then that happens, and that's just an unprecedented like situation to handle. Like, how do you feel like like you and Jacob were during that time?
That there's a couple of different answers to that, I think. And for me, I know that was something that I don't want this to come off bad, but in a way it like reaffirmed my decision of like me wanting to be here and like be a part of this, because like seeing the way that like family was able to rally around one another, seeing the way that like clients rallied around, Amanda and everything like that. It was, I mean, for such an awful circumstance, I think that like my silver lining of it was like, look at how many people care, like look at how many people are there and like offering support and like offering like anything that they can do to like try to alleviate at least some of the pain that like
the clients were incredible.
And it was really cool to see. And I think that it was just like, given the circumstance, I mean, as I explained, I had never got the pleasure of actually like meeting David, but it was like, I think it brought us all closer in a way.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
I mean, realistically, I feel like I know more about him now than I would in like a traditional circumstance at this point.
Yeah.
But as far as it goes for Jacob, I think that that's like a little bit different. I can't necessarily like speak for him, but his birthday was also that weekend.
Oh, wow.
And that is something that like, I think it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
Because now it's also going to be like, when the year does come up, it's going to be David's anniversary, but it's also going to be Jacob's birthday the day before.
Right.
And I think that that's a little tough for him.
Yeah.
But I think that
I hadn't realized that.
Yeah, and I think too, it's just kind of like, I don't know about his relationship or the relationship that he had with David and like things like that. And like, I know that like our relationship is a little bit different because like I also do your hair, so I get to spend different time with you. So
yeah,
it makes it a little tough to be able to like fully answer it, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that it was something that brought us all closer together in a really sad way.
Yeah.
But I would never want anything like that to ever happen. But I mean, I think that from that, I learned a lot about the people here. And it made me realize that like, this is like the place that I want to be and the place that like I want to grow my career.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
But it's true.
Yeah, I just, worried about what that was like for you guys as well. It's just crazy.
It is crazy. And like, it's multidimensional, I think, too, because Bella is one of our best friends as well.
Right.
And so like kind of working through that a little bit and having like that end of it, but also like.
And just not to interrupt you, but to explain for the people, Bella worked at the salon for a while as a receptionist. And so that's how you met her.
Yes.
And y'all became very close.
Yes. And we still, we still are. And
yeah,
I consider her one of my best friends. But it's still different because, having conversations about like what you're going through and like navigating those feelings and like trying to offer help that way looks different than it does for the way that like Bella or even Sarah is processing things. Because I also do Sarah's hair.
That's right.
And so I did Sarah's hair, I want to say, I'm trying to remember what month it was.
It would have had to be in September before she went back to school. I took her back to college mid-September.
Because she was also getting her nails done too.
Yeah, right before she went back.
Yeah.
So it would have been early September.
I do remember it was like fairly recent still. I mean, it still is recent, but like more recent.
Yeah, it maybe been a month.
Right. And
since you passed.
Her perspective was, again, different than that of yours or Bella's. The way that she spoke about like how she was feeling, I thought was like extremely mature for her age. And the way that she was saying, like, I mean, it was still so recent, but she was saying, she's like, I'm just looking for, I see the light. Everything that I see where like something's funny, I laugh and I think of him. Or like something like the sky looks like a little bluer today, like that's him. Like I think that she was very intentional about like wanting to remain like as positive as she could about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially considering like how recent that had happened. I mean, you don't hear, how old is she? How old was she? Like 19?
Yes. She had just turned 19 a couple, 2 or 3 months before
that, right? So for a 19-year-old to be able to like vocalize and like almost choose the way that her feelings are going to go is, I think that that's kind of like unheard of, especially in a traumatic instance like that. And that's just like so out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I remember that conversation so vividly because it was, I mean, it was incredible the way that she was able to speak and like the way that she was able to just know that, you know, she wants to remember like the best parts of him and like the best parts of like their relationship. And she did break down during that appointment one time.
Oh.
But at the same time, like, how could you not?
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't want to get into it too much unless she wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, the same with your first appointment. Like, it wasn't like I was going to be just, you know, asking all the questions, but if you wanted to talk, I was there and you didn't at that time.
Yeah.
But I think that she was glad that she has the family that she has, glad she has a support system, the friends, like her peers, everything like that. And it was really, really cool to see that for her.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
You know, like doing a service like this too, like doing hair, I think as much as people don't want to go and get things like this done, or like they might think it's selfish, or they might think that like that's the last thing that they need to be doing in a time like this, like I see it a little bit differently because it's like sometimes you need just a chance to, you know, that look good, feel good mentality, as well as, I mean, a physical touch aspect that is not forced upon because it's within a service. Like, I think that, you know, with every like love language is like hit a little bit without forcing it, you know? So I think that it was, I mean, even though no one wanted to come and get their hair done after this happened, I'm glad that you guys did and that like you trusted me with being able to like with doing that. And I mean, it was a little hard in the beginning to get you to come in, but you did it.
And I appreciate how you handled it and gave me space. I mean, I'm typically that kind of client anyway.
Right.
You and I talk quite a bit, but that's because you talk to me a lot.
Right. I'm a yapper.
If you didn't, I would probably just sit here quietly, you know, and I appreciate that you gave me that space. Yeah. And for Sarah, I think that you know, my kid is a smart kid and she's, you know, in some ways very mature for her age and she's logical and reasonable. But also I think that some of that is because of the fact that, and I just like to talk about this a lot on my podcast because I think it's important, but Sarah's been in therapy since she was 10. So David and I have taken the girls to therapy since Bella was 12 and Sarah was 10. So half of her life, she has had a consistent medical practitioner that's helped her talk through things.
That's just amazing.
So I think that that's also helpful because you, like you mentioned, it's to you were like, wow, that's unheard of to hear a 19-year-old reason that way.
Right.
But she's been working on having that kind of thinking and being reasonable with a medical professional since she was a child.
I think that that's a really important thing to note too.
Yeah.
I think that that's wonderful that you guys provided that for them. And I mean, clearly therapy works, you know?
Clearly it does. So you mentioned that going to David's Rosary was the first time you'd ever been to one.
Yes.
So not even just like a viewing, like had you not experienced a loss that closely in your life before?
So I have experienced a bit of loss. One of the first one that I dealt with was my great grandma who lived with us. And that was a very, very hard thing. I was 5. I remember it was like we were in the hospital visiting her over my sister and I's birthdays. I remember the gifts that we received in the hospital for our birthdays. I remember the movie that we were watching. And, you know, I moved to Washington when I was 5 as well. So I don't have a whole lot of memory of Texas. That's my only memory that I have, is when she was about to pass and when she did. It was a little bit more unexpected. She was actually supposed to move with us.
Okay.
So that was really hard, and I didn't realize the extent of it until I actually started having dreams about it.
Okay. When you were older?
Yes. Like recurring over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Of watching the movie All Dogs Go to Heaven, getting that gift, and then also the way that she passed was she had diabetes, she was a smoker, but I wanted her to go and watch me rollerblade. And so I was trying to rush her out the door, and a fold-out chair hit her knee, and it caused her to get gangrene, and that's how she passed.
Oh my goodness.
So indirectly, as a 5-year-old, I like, in a sense, like felt that was my fault.
Right. Which it was not.
Right.
Like, okay.
So, but the thing is like, I know that this was true. I didn't want to talk to anyone about it, because she like raised my mom. So I never wanted to be like, so is this actually what happened? But it finally got to a point where I was having this dream like too consistently.
Yeah.
And so I just had to sit down and ask her, and it was kind of crazy, like being able to like recollect that. And she's like, you remember all of those things? And I'm like, yes. And we had a conversation about that, and it was like almost like grieving everything like for the first time for me. And that was very difficult. But as far as like more recent goes, every instance that I've been to of losing like a loved one have been either memorial services or vigils. I lost a good friend in college to suicide. And I think that that's like where navigating how to like take care of the people around you kind of came from for me.
Okay. Like
making sure people are eating, making sure that like things are getting done, because while we got excused from, I want to say it was like a week of school, that wasn't enough. Like 1 week of college, like, and you get so far behind and things like that. And like, so trying to remain people at the same time as like such a tragic event, like losing the friend that we did.
Right.
Trying to like get through all of that and a big group of people together was just, it was very hard. But that was, like I said, David was the first rosary. His was the first rosary I've ever been to, because anyone that I've lost, it's been like cremation or memorial services or vigils, like commemorating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
you'd never been to like a visitation where like the person is there and everybody's viewing them, and then
I have not. And so that's why it was also like really special that, we were welcomed to go, and why it was so important for me to go and be there, even if I hadn't met David, because it was like,
I feel like even, it's weird to say, but like putting a face to a name,
right,
finally, even under that circumstance.
It absolutely was, because it was just like, it gave me so much different perspective hearing you guys speak. And like, you and I have talked about that before, that like, that was something that, it was so well worded, like what you were saying specifically. Like, I felt like I really got an understanding of kind of who he is. And it was really special to be able to go. Yeah.
And in a way, that's also the fact that you guys went. Anyone losing a loved one, people love their loved ones. It's just, I'm not trying, I don't want to ever feel like I'm saying that like David was this like exceptionally special person versus others, and that, that there's like a level of specialness that he had that others didn't. That's not a fair thing to say about anyone, but there were tons of people there, and I say that, and when I talk about him, and I think people even sometimes wonder like why I'm so inspired to do this podcast about him, but he really was just an exceptional person. And I think the fact that like there were so many people there would even help like you and Jacob to understand that, because you didn't really know him personally, but you can see like, wow, all of these people
who came out to support and came out because they loved him. And like, we were standing in the back, like there were no seats left, and there were people outside in like the waiting area, because there was no room because of how packed that place was. Yeah. And it made us very emotional to see that, and to see like y'all as well. And like, right. It was It was a hard day, but I mean, there was no way that we weren't going to go to that.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Do you feel like you're pretty well versed in dealing with grief personally?
I would say I could be better. I would say, like, overall, I will typically handle it in a way that you do,
Okay.
very similarly, in the sense that, like, at least of me watching your grieving process from the outside, this is the way that, like, I interpret it, or I resonate with it, rather. But the way that you were getting everything done, like, you were feeling all the feelings at the same time, like, there was no way you weren't going to be able to. But at the same time, there were so many things that needed to get done. I mean, you had to take care of your babies, like all of those things. And then I feel like once all of those things got figured out, that's when it like truly hit you, and it like cycled back to like when it like first happened. And I feel like I do that in the same way, where it's like I got to grind things out, like I got to get it done. I have to get whatever needs to be done or whatever needs to be organized. But then at the same time, like I feel things a little bit later than what people feel. Like once I make sure everyone else is okay. Or like as okay as you can be.
Right.
That's when like I'll start feeling the feelings.
Yeah.
But I think that I don't know like how one could be, like how one could get better in an essence, because it's such a complicated thing that unfortunately people are going to have to get used to is loss. Like that's one of the biggest things that people go through, but it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe navigating it can be easier, but like I always say, like grief is not linear. So depending on the situation, depending on whoever you're losing, or depending on like the support system that you have at the time or anything like that, I feel like it really is a determinant of how you handle it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you can't be grieving 6 months later,
Right.
10 months later,
No, for sure.
years later. Like I think that gave me a lot of perspective when I had like that conversation with my mom, because it was like, I'm grieving this. I want to say I was like 17. So I'm grieving this 12 years after it happened for the first time.
Right.
And so I think that just kind of like set the pace for like how I grieve everything else.
Yeah. Well,
that makes sense.
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks. Okay, well, let's take a break for lunch because I'm processing now, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and lunch is about to get here. I just saw it. So let's take a break and then we will come back once we're done shampooing and glossing and probably even blow drying.
Yeah.
Because they won't be able to hear us.
They won't hear us.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. We'll be back.
We'll be back.
Okay, Mare. So I have one last question for you.
What is your question?
Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Okay.
What would you say has been like one of the largest factors that have kind of like helped you through this process? Like, do you feel that it's the podcast?
You know, a lot of people ask me that, and not yet.
Okay.
I do feel like it's starting to give me a sense of purpose, which is I've definitely not had one since David died. I've been trying to just continue on with life and being like, the life that already existed is my purpose, and that's even without him. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think that it's probably like a therapeutic process that I am not aware that it is being therapeutic while I'm going
like
through
it's
it.
Subconsciously helping you more than you think that it is.
Right. But people always ask me or say like, oh, that's got to be real therapeutic, right? And I don't look at it that way or think of it that way, but I think a year from now when I look back on it, it will have been therapeutic.
I can understand that.
So I think that ultimately, hopefully, this does end up being one of the biggest things that I've done to cope with my grief and help me heal.
Right.
But the other thing is therapy, like I always get on my soapbox about.
Right.
I think that's extremely important. And one of the things that I think my therapist tells me that I hate to do, but I try to practice is from the beginning, she would tell me, just keep moving. And I would tell her, what the hell does that mean?
Right.
And she would say, just keep moving, Maria. Like, you'll know what it means. And she was right. I just have to keep moving.
I think that that's a good way to look at it, though.
Yeah.
What is your favorite, if you had to pick one, what's like your favorite memory that you have with David?
If I
if you had to pick one.
So first of all, you don't know this about me, Meredith, but I am bad with favorites. I don't have a lot of favorites. Like I don't like have a favorite song and a favorite color and a favorite food, and I have a hard time picking favorites.
So like what is if okay, then let me rephrase my question.
Okay.
If I were to ask you what is a memory that you will typically if you were to think of David, or if someone were to ask you about like a favorite, or not a favorite memory, but like a memory that you hold like very dear to you, or something that you just like you can't really get out of your head, what memory would it be?
Well,
the one that you think about the most often.
Every day I try to remember his laugh because I don't want to forget it. And so every day I try to remember that David had like two specific laughs. He had like a deep kind of like bass tone chuckle. And then when he was like being exceptionally like silly, so probably more so with like me or the girls, or, you know, not like with his friends or the guys, or, you know, he did like this higher toned, almost like falsetto, like giggle. So every day I try to remember both laughs and hear it in my head so
That's
that
really sweet.
I don't forget either of them.
Right. I think that's really sweet. When did you start, which I know this is different for everyone, but like when did you start feeling like things were going to be okay again? Or do you still not feel that way? Or is it like, does it come in waves?
Yeah, I still don't feel that way, but I'm a Christian and I believe in God, and I am a woman of faith, and so I feel like I am confident in my relationship with God, and David and I have tithed our entire marriage, and I do practice having faith in God in all things. So I guess the answer is that right now I don't know that everything's going to be okay, but I am reminding myself to center myself in my faith, because it's not up to me. It's up to God. And I have to have faith that he's going to fix it. And fix it is not the right word, but the reason I say fix it is because like, I mean, I get angry with God. I'm not angry with God like, I'm not going to believe in you anymore, God, because you took my husband. Angry. I'm angry because like, I don't understand why you took him so soon, and it wasn't enough time with him, and we had so much going on that was great and so much to still live for. And so like I mean, I get angry with God and I'm like, fix it. Like fix my circumstances in my life now, because you're the one who made that decision for me. That was your will, not mine.
Right. And it's also like, what's the lesson?
Yeah.
I think too, I feel like that's like a really hard part of losing someone, is that like, I feel like everyone's just like, okay, well, it happens for a reason. That's so easy to say.
Yeah, but that's so hard to deal with.
That doesn't make you feel better.
No.
And I think,
and I'm like, what reason could I possibly have lost him for?
Right.
Or when people say
what's
like,
the lesson?
Yeah.
What's the like, this is a trial that you're being put through, but like, you just haven't found the why yet.
Yeah, and I'm like, but my husband had to like not exist in this world anymore because of that. Like, yeah, I don't accept that answer.
I don't think so either.
So, yeah, I don't know. So that's my non-answer answer.
I think it counts.
Okay.
I feel like it counts.
Okay.
Like indirectly, but directly at the same time.
Yeah.
What's like the hardest part of this process for you, like right now at this time?
The hardest part of this process is just being without him. Not having him to like witness each other's lives.
Right.
Like he was my best friend, and I hate leaving from work for the day and not being able to call him and
go home to him.
Yeah, and hug him, and or even just, I mean, he traveled for work too, so like even just being able to like communicate with him, like that's the biggest thing that I say. Like when I think my healing and moving forward and being okay, you know, so to speak, would be, I could do it, but I need to have one last conversation with my husband.
Right.
But I can't.
If you did, what would you want to say?
I don't know if I'm ready to share that.
That's okay. Not right now, thanks.
But I'm definitely, I feel like I need, especially losing him suddenly and unexpectedly, I have one more
You want one more
I
conversation?
need one more conversation with him.
And I don't think that that's like an unfair thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's an unfair circumstance that you don't get to have that.
Yeah.
At least where it's like you're actively hearing the other side of it.
Right. Yeah, because I talk to him all the time.
Right.
But I need him to talk back to me. I need to like know I'm having a conversation with him, and I need to talk to him. So.
Well, I can understand that. So I know, like on my own side of things, when people are asking how you're doing, like things that you're going through, like how you're processing everything, a lot of it is like rehearsed and like thought out. I feel it's like, okay, well, this is my answer. If anyone asks me, this is like my standard response.
Okay, what's your standard response?
Well, I mean, like situationally. So like if I were to ask you how you're doing right now, and I'm sure if other people asked you, you would probably say something similar, right? And so do you actually like, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do you actually
feel the way that
you're telling people? Like, do you feel like you're going through the motions by you saying that, or do you feel like that's actually like what you're feeling?
No, I very early decided to answer that question honestly and not worry about whether or not the answer to my question makes other people comfortable.
Right.
Because I appreciate them asking, but there's no reason why I have to placate them and make myself uncomfortable or unhappy in doing that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So, for instance, like people will ask, even to this day, like, how are you doing? And I don't say, I'm good, because I'm not.
Right.
I say, I'm doing okay. And I am, or like if I'm having a bad day and someone says, and I think I've even probably said this to you, Mary, like, yeah, like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. And they're like, what's wrong? My husband died.
Yeah.
Like, oh, shit, sorry. Well, I mean, but that's the truth. The truth is that I know it was 8 months ago, but what's wrong with me in this moment right now, 8 months later, is that I'm having an emotional issue because my husband died.
Right.
And so I try to answer truthfully because I think it's the healthiest thing for me. And also, maybe it's rude to answer that way to people. I don't know. But I think it's also should be the norm, because the fact that we don't talk about grief, and we don't, like, our society we don't know how to handle people who are grieving and things like that, is because
no one talks about it.
No one talks about it. And the normal thing to do is to placate you in the conversation so that you're not uncomfortable with my discomfort.
Right.
But why is that a thing?
I don't think it should be.
It shouldn't be. Why shouldn't I just answer truthfully?
Well, do you always think that people ask with the best intention? I think that's another part of it too, is I feel like sometimes people, and I don't want to say this and sound like insensitive, but I think that sometimes people ask like out of obligation.
Yes, for sure.
What I've noticed. And it's like, so I think that uncomfort to them can almost be like,
well, yeah,
because they weren't expecting like a truthful answer.
Right, because it was just a courteous question.
Oh, how are you doing? But like, you're going to answer because you're asking, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. And maybe that will teach them, don't ask then if you really don't,
if you don't really
want to know.
Like, you don't have to ask.
Yeah, don't give me the obligatory, how are you? Because I really don't want to have to answer it. But if you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you the truth.
I agree.
Yeah.
Also, do you feel like the eyes, like that specific look that people give you? You know what I mean? Like when you lose someone, it's just like, how are you? Like, do you notice that? Does it bother you?
I noticed it way more in the earlier months than I do now. Okay. Now it's different because I feel like it's been so many months to other people that like it's kind of like in the past for others.
But it's not.
But it's not for me. Yeah.
That makes sense. I can understand that. What is it like? Sorry, I know I was like, I have one more question. But
that's okay.
It's just like, I have all the questions. If anyone, like, I want to help you in any way that I can, obviously. And if people want to help you right now, like, what would be something that they can do for you? Or can you not exactly describe? So I appreciate that you want to help me, Mare, first of all. Thank you so much for saying that. And I appreciate that.
this is going to sound really silly because what I need people to do to help me is super simple. And maybe this is not what you even expected me to answer, but I did very early on in the beginning did notice the first like week or two, everybody wanted to help. Everybody would, offer help, which is sweet. And I appreciate that. And
But
it's
that
amazing.
fades.
It does fade, but also in the beginning, you don't know what you need help with.
Exactly.
So it's kind of just a superficial offer and answer, right?
Like, let me know if I can do anything.
Yeah. And
what
you're
can
like,
I do? And
I
you're
don't
like,
know.
I don't know.
I can't even like think about, taking a bath right now.
Right.
Like, I don't know. So after a couple of weeks, I did really try to think about what I did really need and the people who offered help that I really could get that help from and reach out to them if I had a need. And most people did follow through on the offer, which was amazing. I think what I just need right now, because I'm trying to figure out who I am without my husband as a person in my businesses and my work, everything, right? And I really would like my podcast to grow,
right?
Even though that's really not where it started. But now that we're here 5 months later, so the way that people could help me is by subscribing and liking and referring me.
I think in a way,
because that'll help.
I think it's giving you like a sense of like a little bit of like purpose that way too. Like you were saying earlier, that like having that, like those viewers or people who are like relating and able to be like, I never even thought that this was a conversation that you would have in this situation, but like, it's insightful. I feel like that's like the impact that you need to be having on people.
Right.
And I feel like that gives you like a sense of like keep pushing and keep moving.
Is
that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's really the only help I need from anyone right now. Beyond that, I'm okay.
Well, I'm a big fan. I'm a subscriber.
You are. Thank you, Mary. I'm a big fan of yours. Are we all done?
We did it.
I love it.
That's so pretty.
Perfect. Well, Mary, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it and enjoyed our time together.
I always enjoy our time together.
Maybe we'll come back and do it another time.
That would be so fun.
Okay, I love that. Well, I'm going to say goodbye for this week, but our listeners and viewers can come back next Saturday and they can join me and learn more about what it's like in my casa, or if they want to talk about what it's like in their casa with me, they can send me an email. I'll talk to you soon.